Hello, it's Bill with Colorado 4x4 Van. Just shooting a quick video in response to some of the comments I've gotten on the channel here lately and through other means uh, about what the future holds for the van this year. And out here at van quarters, haven't even unloaded from the Moab trip yet. Well, unloaded the basics, but I was hoping to get out again this weekend, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So got a list of things I want to do this year, but I thought I'd give a review of things that I've done over the past year, seeing it's the 1 year anniversary, and just go over them one by one and give a kind of a quick review on each one of them, how they've worked out since I've used them, and whether they're worth doing in the future. So we'll start outside. Got the lights down here, as I've showed them before. There's one on each side back here. And there's one on the front up here, the big one. And I put those on with the idea that if we got into some place late at night and we needed to see all around us to get into a spot, we would have those. And they came in handy on this Moab trip. We got into a spot, it was about 10 o'clock at night, really full the first night. So we got into in an area where the lead guy was pulling a toy hauler, and he came up to a place where he couldn't go any further, so we had to back it out. Couldn't turn around. So I turned on all my lights and just stayed behind him and let him out. So that worked really well. And we found a spot later, and we turned those on without making the neighbors too angry, and we're able to see the whole lay of the area there and set up our stuff in the dark. So those worked out great. So I'm glad I put those on. What else have I done outside? All the wheels and tires. And I love the wheels and tires. Get a lot of compliments from them about them every time we're out. One of my buddies looking to get them in a bigger wheel for his pickup, but I don't know if he can get them that size or not. But the new all-terrains, the tread is a little bit thinner than the originals, but the traction is great, and I think they look good. And like I said, I get nothing but compliments, so that was definitely a nice piece to put in. The outside speakers, used them a little bit on this last trip, but don't use them as much as I thought I would, because most of the guys that I ride with, they bring their DeWalt radios or whatever, and we just turn those on. They use less power. I mean, those can run for 8 hours on a charge, and you aren't running down your batteries at night. My stereo and amp and everything uses between 3 and 5 amps, depending on how loud it's turned up. So that's when there's no solar coming in, that's a little bit much. So I'm not using those as much as I thought I would, but I can see where during the day, if we have a picnic or something and there's good solar coming in, I could use those. So I still like them, even though I haven't used them as much as I thought I would. Coming inside now, some of the latest pieces I put in this year. The new sink worked great. There's no residue left in here. It all drains out just fine. Worked great. It's a little bit bigger, so easier to wash up. I use this mainly to wash my hands, face, brush my teeth, and everything at night, and it worked great. Wash dishes, things like that. The new water pump, which is under here, higher flow, worked great. So happy with that. The new solar charger. I really like the readout on it. It seems to be more efficient. But I like the readout on it. You can read it from any angle, even the rear view mirror when you're driving. So I really like that about it. And I really loved when I cleaned up all the wiring and got everything kind of minimalized I need to add another battery. That's something I'd like to do. But as far as the solar, it worked great. I didn't use the furnace at all this time. I talked about use the heater mainly. I'll show that in a minute. But lights, the fridge ran the whole time, and didn't get below 12.5. Yeah, 12.4, 12.5 volts with it running all night and all the time. So that was good, because this was the first year of the fridge. And speaking of that, got my Moab sticker here. Fridge worked great. Kept everything the right temperature. The site for the fridge says it uses average 2 amps per hour. And I found that's variable. Because that's 48 amp hours a day. And I think I use a little, it depends on the temperature. Like some days, this side of the van would be parked toward the sun, so we could sit on the other side. And then it gets, since I have a dark colored van, it get kind of hot. And even though I've added the intake vent down here and there's an output vent up there, that helped get some of the heat out of there. But it's variable. But like I said, I have the 100 amp hour battery and my solar, and between those two it ran the whole time and kept everything cold, and it was fine. So I'd say overall I like it. It uses it's by far the biggest power user I have in the van, so we'll have to tinker with some more of that as time goes on, but overall pleased with that. Haven't got to use the new cooktop, but here it is. Used my countertop version again this trip, but just to show you, here it is. It's Dickinson Marine, just like the heater, but it's not plumbed in yet. But I did use this as a table. Sat on my ottoman there, had my food here, watched some TV that rainy afternoon, and used it as a table, and that works great. So I'll get the kinks of that worked out, and I think it'll be good when it's all done, said and done. Coming around this way, the new lighting worked great. Moving this over here gives you a nice light on the countertop area here, and at night that was definitely a big help. So that was a good choice. The TV, I said at the hunting camp video that it was flickering, and I've come to find that this TV doesn't like to run below 12.7, 12.6 volts. It'll first start to flicker, and then when it gets to 12.5 volts or so, it just shuts off. So it's basically designed to only work 12 volts when the solar's out really strong, the engine's running, or I'm plugged into shore power. That keeps the voltage high enough that it runs. But if you're boondocking at night and your battery gets around 12.5 or lower volts, it won't run. So that's frustrating. But that afternoon when it was raining, I just ran my generator and I watched some movies that way. One suggestion I got was a guy made a thicker power cord, and he said that would take it down to about 12.3 volts. So I'm going to try that next. And but I mean, if I use it, it's because the weather's bad and I'm in here, or at night before bedtime or something like that. So running the generator is not that big a deal if I had to do that. But the whole idea of going to 12 volt was so I'd be generator free at some point. So we're going to have to mess with that and see how we get that fixed. What else is new since last year? The stereo. Stereo works great. Have had no problems with it. Runs on the iPad there, and also has a Bluetooth feature. I have the TV plugged into the auxiliary there, so we can watch movies in surround sound and pump the audio outside if wanted to do that. So thumbs up there. Remote control from bed, so that's nice to have. And yeah, very pleased with that. Alpine, good stuff. The heater, and I've talked about this a little bit already at hunting camp and some other videos, and this comes down to what you're doing with your heat. This puts out between 3,200, I believe, on low and 4,200 on high, 4,200 BTUs. So that's less than half of this furnace is 9,000 BTUs. But I've since discovered that even the Mr. Buddy heaters that a lot of people use, they put out between 6,000 and 9,000 BTUs, just the little Mr. Buddy heater. So as far as just heating, there are more efficient options out there. Those Mr. Buddy heaters run about the same runtime, 100 to 120 hours on a 20-pound bottle. So you don't get the forced air part that this has, and you don't get the fireplace part out of it either. And it looks better, I think. But then again, you're talking about $700 to $900 for this, and is that worth it? You'd have to. It depends on what you're using it for. Me, it's taken me, like I said, to about 3 seasons. But I have a lot of glass. I have very little insulation. I haven't even finished this wall yet. So with all that, it kept it about 30 to 35 degrees warmer in here than outside. So in Moab this time, it was between 25 and 30 degrees at night outside, and it was 55 to 60 degrees in here. Closer to 60 most of the time. And that was on high. And to get that, I also had to, I got these new Ryobi tools. This is the fan, and I would set that, this just hangs here. I would set that down here, face it straight up, and turn it on at night, and that circulated the warm air all over, and so there was no thermocline, like I said in an earlier video. And this gets about 6 to 7 hours of runtime on a charge. So that was perfect for that, but it's just one more thing to do, and I did that so I could have the heater at this height, which is what I wanted for the visual aspects of it. I wanted to be able to sit in bed, have the fireplace, and I said this is only something you need to do the very early spring, like this Moab trip, and late fall, like my hunting trip, but the rest of the time, you rarely use that unless it's rainy and cold out. You rarely use it anyway. So it just depends on what you want to do. But is it worth the cost? I don't know. Just Incredible made it famous using this, but his Explorer is a lot better insulated, and his windows aren't as big, and he had curtains over the windows he had, plus his high top's all insulated. His sides are, I mean, he's got a much more insulated rig than I do. So it might have worked for him, but if you have an older rig like me, it may not be worth the cost. Next, I have the new light back here. That's a different color light, and I really like that. It lit up, not pitch black out. It lights up enough in here to get dressed and go to bed, wash up, and everything by just pointing it up. And it's great for reading, and I like the color of it better than these more commercial bright white type lights. So I really enjoyed that. I'd like to get another one, or maybe 2, maybe replace that one, and maybe add another one up here somewhere for this counter also. So really like those lights. They really turned out nice. Just got those on Amazon. The new cabinet worked great. Was able to I got all my remotes and stuff in here, kept some snacks and some water in here. My reading glasses were down there, so really like this, a little more privacy, so that worked out great. The storage down there, easy to get to for things like my Ryobi light here. Got this for this trip, and these work awesome. It's a great light that is pretty bright, has 2 settings, bright and dim, but we used this in the middle of camp several nights, and it worked great. 120 hours or so of run time on a charge. Never had to charge that battery the whole time we're down there. So this worked great. And I've already gone over the fan and used this mostly at night for circulating the heat, but also once or twice during the day when it was really warm in here. Kept the van locked up and mostly closed up because the weather is unpredictable there. So you come and you open it up and you just turn that on, and it gets a lot of the heat pushed out in a hurry. And same battery, and I've got the car charger here, 30-minute charger. Worked great with the solar. It just worked awesome. So a little bit more to carry, and I know Ryobi doesn't have the best reputation in tools. I can attest to that, but these for camping work great. And lastly, I installed, you saw in the video, I had my suitcase, soft size suitcase here, my helmet's here, but I put in these pieces to hold these bins tight, and I got those 2 long ways over there. And I did that because this stuff back here just kept on, once you get off road, this top shakes a little bit. So I had those put in so that hold that all tightened together, and they didn't move at all. And I did not a lot of off-roading, but we were back in there quite a ways. And the first day I explored some campsites that were about 6-7 miles past Slick Rock, and got back on some Jeep trails, and didn't shake anything loose. Everything stayed put and fit exactly the way it should. So that worked out great. I get questions not all the time, but a lot of the time. When are you get rid of the blue seats? When are you gonna finish the front cab? And that goes into what I plan on doing for this year. The next thing I want to do for the van is the motor. And what's in there now is a crate motor, Goodwrench 350 basic crate motor. It's pretty near worn out. I don't know how many miles it has on it. Not the stock motor, obviously, but it's leaking at the rear, at the main seal. So I want to, not bad. I hope it gets me through this year. But and pulling without a trailer going to Moab, even up I-70, the van did fine. Even on the steepest Vail Pass, Eisenhower Tunnel, I didn't get below 50. The only time I slowed below that was when traffic forced me to. So without a trailer, it does fine. But pulling a trailer, it really bogs it down. So I'm looking to upgrade the motor this year, probably at the end of the year. And I'm looking at a 383 small block Chevy, and that should have about a little over 400 horsepower at the crank, which should give me well over 300 at the rear wheels, and that should be plenty to pull. It'll hook up to the existing transmission, and but my van is old enough so the radiator bracing doesn't come out, so I'll be putting the engine in through here and in the back way right there. So that's why I'm not at that time. I'll have to take the seats out. I'll have to put some padding over the wood floor right there so it doesn't get damaged. Take the shifter out and make room to get that through here. And once that's done, then I can put the carpet in. I got a guy already that's going to recover the seats. He did my buddy's 4Runner late last year, and did a really nice job. So I'm going to get those recovered and basically finish up this interior in here once the motor's in. That way it won't get damaged and beat up from potentially dropping something very heavy on it or dragging it or whatever. So that's going to come up probably the next off season. I'm going to try and get through one more year with this one. But that's the next big thing that I want to do. And eventually I'd like to get an overdrive transmission put on, but to do that you have to get rid of the Pathfinder transfer case, and all of that has to go because it won't fit. So a lot of guys put in a 205 transfer case, and then you just get resized your drive shafts, but then you're talking about, that's a lot of money. So I'm going to do the motor first, and we'll see how that does, and then we'll go from there. But all that other stuff can be done outside. You don't have to get inside for that. So the motor first, and then we'll move on to those things after that. And the other things I plan to do this year is I'm going to finish up the inside. This is still open. I have a camera to mount up high on the back outside that'll watch the load in the trailer. I have to wire that up, and it'll run back to my same monitor there, so I can check on that whenever I want. And then I have a third brake light I want to put up high on the high top back there, and that'll probably just be wired down in the corner there to the existing brake lights. And then I have some grounding to do. Right now I'm using chassis grounds on most of the stuff, and I've decided I want to put a ground block back underneath where the electrical is, and I'm going to run grounds to the water pump, all the stuff up here, and anything else that I can think of that I can get to, and run them back to a ground block that's hooked directly to the battery. Right now the only thing hooked directly to the battery is the fridge, so I want to make sure I run everything back to the battery. chassis grounds are good, but if they ever came loose or if they're inaccessible and they stopped for whatever reason, that could be bad. So I'm going to run everything back where it's accessible. So I'm going to do all that, and then I'll finish up trimming out all the walls, finish putting this stuff on all the trim, and I want to get the van done this year because next year I'd like to get going seriously on the van pod. So this will be next year's job. I still haven't done anything other than strip out the inside, but I've got a bunch of parts sitting here. I already got my battery, got my water tank, got the hot water heater with the shower head and everything, water pumps, got the solar panel already up there, but gonna have to scrape all of this Line-X off to repaint it, get the lift on it, same wheels and tires, and yeah, rewire it. That's a big project in and of itself, so I want to get on that next year. So this year I just want to get the van wrapped up, and that's going to be a pretty tall order, but that's the plan for the year. So to answer all your questions, if you have any others, leave questions below and I'll try to answer those, but I think I've covered about everything I've done in the last year, and I'll post another video when we get some more work done or some more play done, one or the other, whatever comes first. Till next time.